the first thing is review of Zoom procedures. I don't know if we need to do that, or maybe we should just talk about.
We'll be all set.
Okay. Yeah, whether we should do this public input session or postpone it.
Talk about.
Okay, yeah, which is, if we don't need to review Zoom procedures, is the next item.
They do have to announce themselves.
Well, I'd love to.
If everybody wants to introduce themselves, Aaron and Maria and Sean. If the three of you that are working on, who are online, want to just introduce yourselves real quick for the record.
Hi, this is Aaron Kasicki. I'm a commissioner.
It's Sean Linehan, Planning Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Maria. Artemis.
Okay, great. And here we've got myself, Ariane Sam, Leah Candlin, and Tim Sinnott. So we're just missing one commissioner. So approval of the agenda, since the storyboards did not go up online and I don't think we have printed copies here. Yeah, not sure it makes sense to have a public input session. But I'm curious to know what other commissioners think.
Yeah, without items to review yet, then I don't think it makes sense for us or anybody else to kind of start this discussion until we've had time to see what the content is, you know?
Yeah, well, I think we have seen the content, I think, right? The land use chapter, the resilience, and
Yeah, we've approved all the pieces of it.
yeah.
And just for background, we've made all of the changes and we have all the documents, but we haven't been able to get them all online yet. We have, the chapters are in one place on the landing page and the implementation plans are on the city page, and not all of them. We've got land use implementation, resilience implementation, and 3 of the community services implementations are online. But we don't have the other 3. So we were hoping we would get through today. Unfortunately, we lost 2 employees out of that department, who usually help with all of this. So Evelyn has been taking over for 2 employees. So the timing that we had planned didn't work out. So, but depending on what we wanted to do, if we had the public, we could certainly go over and talk about things and I could pull up pieces from what we have, but that's up to you guys. Or if you guys want to wait, we can talk about the schedule going forward as to what I'm thinking about for the schedule going forward, then we can decide.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Do other commissioners have any comments or thoughts or want to have the public input session? Or besides, thanks Leah for something.
I don't think it makes sense to have a public input session when we don't have all the parts ready.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right, so this may end up being a pretty short meeting, but let me go over quickly what the upcoming schedule will look like, and see if we're all on the same page with where we want to go. This is my recommendations. We can certainly push things or do things differently. So as I said, everything is ready and the pieces should all be online tomorrow. So those pieces would be done. What the next two pieces that I'm going to be working on with our consultant and that I'll be working on my own, we've got two pieces. One is the landing page, which we're going to be moving everything towards. So, and we talked about that at the previous meeting or 2 meetings ago. We talked about how we wanted to lay it out. We just have to start actually making that migration happen. So I'll be working with Julia on that. And the second piece is the required report, which is an element that is required for warning the public hearing. So what my thought is, there is, in order to warn for the first planning commission public hearing, there needs to be a 30-day notice that goes to the regional planning commission, DHCD, the state agency of housing and community development, and abutting communities. So we have to be thinking out a few weeks ahead if we're going to be, 6 weeks ahead, basically, if we're talking about a 30-day notice. So there's also a 15-day public hearing notice. That's less of an issue because obviously everything has to be ready for the 30-day notice. The 15-day notice is the one that has to go in the paper. What I am proposing or thinking is that our next meeting is February 10th. So we can go through and obviously, because we'll have all the pieces ready, we can go through and have another public input session on these 3 chapters that we have left. We can approve the plan with whatever changes we want at that point. We don't have to, we can push this farther. This is just an idea, and approve the required report. And so what that would do at that point is allow us to warn the public hearing for March 24th. So the second meeting in March, because I need to obviously have a 30-day window to warn it. So if we approve it on the 10th, I can warn the meeting for the 24th. That does give us 2 more meetings on February 24th and on March 10th to continue to take public input. We simply can't vote to make any changes. We would just be compiling, taking input, and then at the public hearing, we could take additional public input and then vote any changes that we want to make. We just can't vote changes on the 24th and 10th because we have warned the public hearing. But nothing says you can't continue to take public input while a hearing is warned. So that would be a thought. The other one would be to not do things concurrently and do them sequentially, which would mean having a couple of public hearings, public inputs, and then making an approved vote, and then adding in the 30 days. So we'd probably be having our hearing in May instead. So I'm just trying to keep things on a little bit of a into a time frame here that works. Because after our public hearing, we would, if we're ready to move it forward, we would vote to move it forward to the city council. There's another 30-day window, and then city council has to have 2 public hearings. So that's for May and June. So my hope is to give them enough window that they could have the city plan approved by the end of June. But they can take as many hearings as they want to have. You guys can have as many hearings as you would like to have, but this is one way of looking at it. If you want, we can get things ready to go. And again, even if we quote approve the plan on February 10th, that's approving a public hearing document. We can continue to make changes. We just have to wait till the 24th of March to make any further changes. And that doesn't have to, we don't have to decide that that's our only public hearing. On the 24th, we could decide to have another hearing on the 10th, because you don't have to keep warning them in the papers. You just have to warn the first one, and then you just continue the hearing to the next meeting. If you hear enough on March 24th that you're like, we really need to have another public hearing, you can have another public hearing, and you can have as many of them as you'd like at that point. So I'll let you guys ask any questions, and we can kind of go from there.
One question that just occurred to me, I know like the energy chapter, for example, needed to substantially be updated, and we kicked that back to the committee. Do you know where that's at, or have those changes been made?
Those changes have been made, except for the energy implementation plan. The changes have been made and they are on Evelyn's desk. Evelyn's priority
Okay.
were to get these three done, and then she was going to go back to the energy plan to get that one ready. It usually takes her 2 or 3 hours to get through, to make one of these boards for the implementation plan. So I'm not expecting that to take too long. So when we're talking about having everything ready in the landing page by the 10th, that timeline isn't an issue.
Okay, so the committee has done the work. It just hasn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We drafted something. We went to committee. They reviewed it. They thought it was good. And we've got 1 or 2 outstanding questions. There was a discussion about maybe we should have a dashboard to show progress. Now, of course, we can't have a dynamic piece, but if MEAC already had a dashboard, we could have a fixed link that goes to a dashboard, but I couldn't find one. So I've asked them, if you've got a dashboard, let me know. I can link to it. If not, then there won't be a link to a progress until some future date when they have an active dashboard. But other than that, most of the punch list is already in. I think the energy plan, I'm switching out one picture. So that's not a big deal. I just have to find the picture and get it to them, let them switch out the pictures and switch out the captions. And then I think the energy storyboard is done. We're just waiting on the implementation plan.
Hey, Mike, really quickly, I'd like to get public feedback, at an actual public hearing as quickly as possible. But just the way that you sort of framed that up just a minute ago, I just have a question. If we have the meeting on the 24th and we decide that we need additional public hearings, I think I heard you say we can continue it to the next meeting. My question is do we have to sort of sequentially keep pushing additional public hearings to the next meeting, or can we take input, kind of digest it for a while, and if we don't have to put out another 30-day notice, we can schedule something out in, say, the beginning of May, or does it have to go to the next meeting?
So it technically does not have to go to the next meeting. It has to be continued to a date certain. So
Okay.
usually what you'll do is you can send it to the next meeting. And if you decide you're not ready, you can just simply go through and continue it to the next meeting after that. Unless at the next meeting, yeah, we're not going to talk about it in the first meeting of April. We're going to have this again in the second meeting of April, in which case we would say, all right, March 24th, we're going to continue the public hearing at the April 20 whatever meeting, and we would have it at that point.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was helpful. I think it could be going through I'm worried about the time crunch, I guess, is what I'm thinking. And so as long as we have those public input sessions, the initial schedule that you laid out of going through the 3 chapters and then going through the plan to approve it, that seems like a lot to do in one session. So I like the idea of being able to kind of have those follow-up public input sessions, especially I'm thinking about land use and that really great map. And I feel like people can and should be zooming in on all of these parcels and land that they might have an interest in. And so I'm kind of expecting there to be a lot of input or interest, particularly about the land use chapter. So having enough breathing room around that and not trying to, cram in another thing in those meetings, I think would be really good. So I like the flexible option that you offered, and what you explained to Aaron makes sense to me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Sure, either time. This really needs to be wrapped up. just thinking about how things can creep in time and continue to go further. So if there's some buffer at the end that we're seeing. Yeah, I think it's probably good to have.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to have things. The only hard deadline that's out there is going in and reapplying for the amended growth center designation. So that's, that's later in the summer, that's September. So, but we can be working on the application, but in order to submit the application, we have to have an approved city plan that has the required map in it. And so that's the overlap between the city plan and that process. So we are trying, and we did want to have this obviously done. We were hoping to have the planning commission side done before the new year so we could get it to council for January, and timing just didn't work out. But we still are within a window that works. And so that'll all eventually depend on how long the council wants to take in their hearing side. But if we got it to them end of March, early April, even late April, there's still enough of a window to get items warned in time.
I think I'm comfortable having it go out and be warned. As I think, like Aaron was saying, it's just important that we are able to digest that information and make our changes. And it sounds like that's possible. So I think I'm comfortable aiming for an earlier session for that.
Yeah, and just to follow up, so we don't have to technically make an actual decision on the schedule tonight. I can certainly go through and prepare the required report and put that on the agenda and get the landing page all done. And if on the 10th, you guys take a look at the document and you take a look at where we're at and say, I don't think I'm ready to warn the public hearing, then you have those documents 2 weeks in advance, and we'll make additional amendments and just push it to the 24th. Just having this lets you guys know what's going through my head. What am I thinking? How am I moving forward over the next 2 weeks? That's what I'm working on, is the landing page, the required report. But if the sense was you didn't think that was a good approach, then I would probably adjust my schedule and work on other things, knowing the required report I could put off for another 2 more weeks. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, unless Maria, you have strong feelings, it sounds like I mean, I feel supportive of, yeah, taking an aggressive timeline, knowing that this process always takes longer than we think it is, going to take. So as long as we can always have opportunities for public input and change built in, I'm comfortable with it. Just going back to the agenda. So I guess we should approve the agenda. These, and maybe we'll just strike number 5. So does anyone, and I don't know if there's any other, I think that was good that we went through the schedule, but if there's any other business we want to do tonight. Or someone could just move approval of the agenda, striking number 5.
I move to approval of the agenda, striking item number 5.
Leah, and a second by
Great.
Tim.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay. So now we have general business comments from the public. I see you have one person on Zoom and we have one member of the public here.
Yeah, Alan, I don't know if you want to go and give any comment right now. You're welcome to, considering we're not having the input session. Otherwise, you can always get in touch with me and we can talk offline as well. If there's some specific questions you have, I'm sure you do. Usually you're interested in how the land use plan and the designations are oriented, and I can certainly reach out and we can have a conversation about that offline too.
I would appreciate hearing those in the open session where the commissioners can hear Mr. Goldman's comments, not just have a private conversation with Mike. I think it's important to get those on the record.
Alan can make that determination for something.
Steve, if you have any input.
Yeah,
Hello, Michael.
Oh,
Hi, Alan.
Hi, folks. Sorry about that. Took me a minute to figure out the unmute. But Mike, as you suggested, maybe it might be easier if we were to go over some of our discussions at a different time.
Okay, I'm always available. Just let me know what your schedule is and we could either set up a Zoom or a phone call, either way.
Sure, especially since the Planning Commission is suggesting to close number 5. It seems inappropriate, folks.
yeah, and I assume that any comments that Ellen makes would go into the matrix of public comments that we would review.
I would.
So,
Yeah, I would be putting any of the recommendations that he has into the matrix for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
All right. Thank you, Alan. I'll look forward to talking to you.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.
okay, yep.
yeah. Alan, I don't know if you can still hear me, but if you can, I'd like you to. I would like to hear Mr. Goldman's comments on the record, specifically because he and Zorzi are a pivotal piece of this plan, of whether I reviewed the original growth center application, and it was all about preserving the view and the high untouched land of Sabins pasture. In fact, Sabins pasture, 3/4 of it, especially all the upper lands, were not in the original growth center. The only reason they had to be was because the TIF application, which was later abandoned and forfeited, unused, required the entire parcel be in the growth center. Whereas the growth center application as prepared and submitted by the city argued for not putting a road through the upper part of Sabins pasture, which is now the assumption fallback plan for a second road into the parcel. But again, I've been reviewing the videos of your public input sessions. I believe it was a mistake to go with the web only format. I tried to download the chapter that was going to be talked about. All that was there was a storyboard. This is really a failed iteration of a planned revision. Working backwards from the growth center deadline of October 1, the part that didn't get mentioned is that the Regional Planning Commission has to adopt our plan and provide written documentation that it fits with the regional plan, which includes the abutting towns. And we don't have any specifics in here, nor even any momentum towards specifics for a country club road site. It is not adjacent, it is not walkable. And if we don't put some specifics in this, we're not creating a complete plan. So I brought all these things up repeatedly and apparently nobody wants to talk about them. So I just kind of feel it important to get them on the record, because I think you're relying on Mike too much, and you're not embracing the obligations you have as planning commissioners, which includes understanding the schedule, understanding the statute of what the mandatory requirements are and making sure they're in there, not just eating out of his spoon and saying it's all covered. If you've read the transcript of the Regional Planning Commission, it's all covered. He's got it all done. He knew what was coming, and that the truth of having the growth center expansion revoked shows that emperor has no clothes. So the capital budget plan is not even begun. And I heard Mike say that we've got all that. And then when I asked for it in a public records request, all he could point to is the White and Burke study. So the White and Burke study doesn't have any specifics for feet of sidewalk, feet of water and sewer and road, and how much they cost and where's the money going to come from. That's what a capital budget is. So I've given you the statute or the reference to the statute of what a capital budget and program looks like. That's the Planning Commission's obligation to put together. And you're not even talking about it. So I think I'm not going to use the train wreck analogy because it's overused, but I don't know what it takes to you've got a full house of commissioners, but you don't have any engagement to the obligations that come along with it. I don't think you've been properly briefed on what the obligations of a planning commission role is. It's not to be just whatever you say, Mike, we're gonna, and another thing that got mentioned, performance measures. I heard that in the context of the energy element, that they want like a dashboard. Repeatedly, folks, a plan has to have what's going to get done by when and measurable performance measures. Otherwise, it's all just hot air. And we've seen even tonight, it's like, oh, blame it on the two people that no longer work here. They weren't responsible for this plan. That's just a decoy. Jane and Mary were not responsible in any way for this plan. So their being gone Evelyn was not responsible for this plan. So this is a lot of, and this is what will happen with executing the plan too, if you don't put specifics, goals, performance measures, and accountability into it. If people don't do their job, or if there's further budget cuts, you still got to have a plan that's executable. And you haven't even begun to talk about that. So I think it's premature to start making, plans for your icing on the cake when your first couple of layers have fallen flat in the oven. So, and I do think Alan Goldman's testimony should be on the record with a recording, or you should insist that he and Mike conduct it via Zoom with a recording going so that you can hear Mr. Goldman's concerns and Zorzi's concerns. Because if this whole growth center expansion hinges upon building a road across their land, you're building a house of cards, And I really wish y'all would discuss this in public, Thanks.
Well, I think our only other agenda item is to consider the minutes. I'll look at the minutes for January 15th.
I move for approval of the minutes.
Second,
I second.
all those in favor?
I
I
Right.
Okay, so I guess before we adjourn, I did want to mention, just think, especially, you know, given the strain on the city's resources right now, whatever we can do to promote our upcoming public input sessions, especially during the winter. It's a great time for people to look over the city plan. So maybe planning commissioners can just do our part to try and get folks out who might be interested in making any comments or reviewing the city plan. I just encourage that. Hey, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion. As much as I'd love to stay here for the next hour and a half.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay,
Campbell
great.
seconds.
Second.
All right.
All right, all those in favor?
Right.
Great. So we'll see everyone on February 10th. for
February 10th, yes.
public input session. Okay, thank you.
Thank
All right.
you all.